This is Football Night in America, served by Applebee's.
All right, Sunday number 13 in the books. Once we get through the Tuesday games, we'll be three-quarters of the way through the league and league season. Everybody will have 4 games remaining. So we have Mike Florio joining us as per usual, and Steve Kornacki, our special guest. We'll get to him at the big board to look at the playoff possibilities in just a minute. Let's start with the Giants in Seattle. If you told me one team is going to go on the road as a double-digit underdog, and we didn't mention during Football Night in America, with Colt McCoy playing quarterback, never would have thought the Giants did. How'd they do it?
With defense. And you know what? I was happy to see some defense because it seems like it's few and far between in the league. But they went out there, they rushed, they put pressure on Russell Wilson, they boxed him in, and they covered those receivers. They didn't give up big plays.
Yeah, the cool thing about the Giants' defense is they can rush their front four. They don't have to blitz to get coverage. And Leonard Williams, he's been outstanding. Jabril Peppers, he's been an outstanding leader for them. So I like what the Giants are doing, Mike.
They had 5 sacks, which you don't do very often against Russell Wilson. And if you think back to the Philadelphia game, and bring Mike Florio in, the Seattle offense wasn't great guns in that game either. So it's back-to-back games for the Seattle offense where they haven't been anywhere near, Mike, what they were in September.
Yeah, we've seen them kind of dip down to the level of the competition. We saw the great offense early, driven by Russell Wilson. Then they started to balance it out some more with the running game. They've just lost their way. And speaking of Colt McCoy, look, Colt McCoy's my hero. This guy's been in the NFL 11 years. He's cashing NFL paychecks, and he rarely has to play. Backup quarterback is an awesome gig to have, and good for Colt McCoy. His number gets called, he comes in and he gets it done.
His last win was when he was the 3rd string in Washington. RG3 got hurt early in the year, and then Kirk Cousins got hurt, and McCoy started back in the state of Texas on a Monday night against the Cowboys and won that game playing for Washington, and here he is, he gets the win. It's a huge one for the Giants. They've won 4 in a row now.
Mike, it's amazing when you watch the Giants compared to watching the Jets and just how active and just how aggressive the Giants play as opposed to the Jets, even though the Jets played hard today.
But what I like about the Giants is they don't give up big plays. They're disciplined on defense. You didn't see blown coverages. You didn't see people running all over the place. Discipline in their pass rush. They just did a wonderful job today.
We'll see Washington play Monday in Dallas on Tuesday, but the Giants are playing the best collective football of the group right now in the NFC East. But now we have Seattle losing and the Rams winning, going to Arizona and getting a win. So how do you see the NFC West as we head to the final quarter of the season with a tie at the top with the Seahawks and the Rams?
I like the Rams because they are playing defense. That group can get after you. Jalen Ramsey gives them the ability to take away one big play receiver, and up front, they rush the passer.
Hey, we got to give a lot of credit to Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff was highly criticized by Sean McVay this week in public, and he came back, didn't turn the ball over. And if they run the football and he doesn't turn the ball over with the defense that you're talking about, they're going to be okay.
But I'm going to give you one more word on the West. Watch out for the 49ers. Don't count them out just yet.
You think they still have a chance to come back and maybe be a part of this?
Championship heart.
Yeah, 5-6 before their Monday night game. Mike Florio, if you had to take a peek at the West here in the final 4 games, Arizona, after that momentum that we thought they had with the DeAndre Hopkins touchdown to beat Buffalo, they've slid back here, and the Rams have reemerged in this division.
I think the Cardinals think that they won some sort of a trophy the night of the Hail Murray. They've shut it down since then. They've lost every game that they've played in the aftermath of that thrilling victory. And the Rams, what I like, guys, they're finding an identity in their running game. Sean McVay was smitten with the Kyle Shanahan multi-headed running back system, and he was going to try to use 3 different guys. He's settling in on Cam Akers, and it's working. And I think that's what they had been missing. They got burned by Todd Gurley's contract. They got to forget about that. Allow one guy to become the guy. That's going to fuel your running game. Your short passing game is going to go from there, and Jared Goff isn't going to have to win games.
Akers had 72 of the 119 Rams rushing yards. Rams have the win over Seattle already, so they have half a leg up. They go to Seattle week 16 of the season, the penultimate game. So what does this all mean in the NFC playoff picture? Steve Kornacki, our friend from NBC News. Well, why is he your man, Rodney?
Because he's a nice guy, Mike. What are you talking about?
And he's a Patriots fan.
That helps.
Truth comes out in the digital hit. Go ahead, Steve. What do you got in the NFC for us?
I learned a while ago, sometimes you make friends like in the Patriots and sometimes you make enemies. Let's take a look here at the NFC playoff situation right now. And you can see you're talking about the Giants, what they did today. If you look inside that NFC East, they got some separation from the rest of the pack, moving up from about a 32% shot of making the playoffs before the day they get the win, 45% 45%. And tomorrow, unless Washington somehow knocks off Pittsburgh tomorrow, that 45% number is going to rise. So the Giants potentially could be a game up on Washington tomorrow with the tiebreaker, beating them head-to-head. You mentioned Seattle fall in the 5th place. Also, that logjam there in the 7, 8, and potentially 9 spot. Minnesota, Arizona, and San Fran. Let's zoom in on that a little bit because I think this is a little counterintuitive. Arizona on the losing streak, falling out of the 7th spot today, but with, among those 3 teams, the best statistical chance of making the playoffs. Why is that? This is the PFF data analytics model. They think Arizona is a better team with more quality wins. They're not impressed that Minnesota is barely beating Jacksonville, barely beating Carolina. If San Fran does win tomorrow night, that number would go up to the low 30s for them. So again, Arizona, even if the Niners can win tomorrow, the PFF data analytics model still likes Arizona's chances despite the 3-game losing streak. So that's something worth keeping in mind, even as Minnesota moves into that 7th spot.
And of interest and of note, Detroit made a coaching change. They're 5-7. They're a game out of the last spot.
Wow.
Darrell Bevell got a big win. A guy who
gets
his opportunity, the offensive coordinator, first chance as a head coach. It was cool. He shot at Matthew Stafford, throwing him the game ball, something he'll cherish forever. Let's flip it over to some of the things that happened in the AFC. If there is a headline, Rodney, it's that the Cleveland Browns, who maybe we weren't sure about, went to Tennessee and got as impressive a win as they've had all season, beating the Titans.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with Kevin Stefanski. It wasn't like he was trying to micromanage Baker Mayfield. He allowed him to throw the ball down the field. Of course, they had success running the ball, but a lot of boots. And Baker, I like his aggressive mindset, Coach.
Yeah, we had seen him early in the season kind of get crushed at Baltimore, get crushed by Pittsburgh. How good are they? They haven't beaten a good team. Well, Tennessee was playing well, and they dominated that game.
I want to come back to those numbers for Mayfield up there because when we were watching, guys, the 2-headed monster at running back for a little bit, say, you know what? They're not letting Baker Mayfield go out and have to do everything. Like it felt like when they had Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. And this game, he came out and was aggressive with the ball.
And this is what should happen. When you run the ball as well as they do, and you go in, you've got to defend Nick Chubb, you've got to defend Kareem Hunt, you should have some people open. And Baker hit them today.
He did.
Mike Florio, all of a sudden now, Cleveland heads to the final quarter of the season, guaranteed a winning record at 9-3. And look, the division's tough to get because of Pittsburgh, but what a tremendous opportunity for the Browns to finally make the playoffs.
And their win over the Titans, and I said it all week, I'm not going to believe the Browns can beat a great team until they beat a great team, but we should have seen it coming from this perspective. Baker Mayfield struggles against a good pass rush. When you have somebody in his face, he doesn't have the mobility to extend plays like some of the other young quarterbacks do. The Titans don't have a pass rush. So he was able to get outside the pocket and move around and do the things he's comfortable doing without guys chasing him down, and we saw the product of it. Now, look, he brought a lot of skill to the table. It helps to have the running game. But as long as they're facing a team that doesn't have a great pass rush, they're going to have a chance against anyone. The challenge is going to be when you come up against a team that can put heat on Baker Mayfield, can he play like he did today?
You know, I've been critical of Baker Mayfield, but some of the throws, Coach, that he made today, I was thoroughly impressed with Mike. I mean, him getting outside the pocket, keeping his vision, just making the right decisions and not making a big mistake.
But you told me before the game started, you said, I'm not sold on Tennessee's defense yet. They have some flaws in the back end, and it showed up today.
This is why I love how the league season plays out. 5 weeks ago, you wouldn't have given me $10 for a ticket to Cleveland at the Giants week 15. Yeah. And now that's going to be an important game, and both teams are getting hot. It shows you what can happen in the league. Let me go to the game that was at the stadium the Giants are the co-tenant at MetLife. The Raiders beat the Jets. The Raiders had that game lost a couple of times. The Jets continued to open the door, and they do not get win one on the season.
Huge win for the Raiders, and they did play 60 minutes. They kept it going, but, you know, the Jets gave them every opportunity to win, and it shouldn't have happened that way, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at defensive coordinator, and Greg Williams, I'm sorry. And Mike, Coach and I, we're yelling at the screen, like, why are you blitzing on the last play of the game? Like, why are you...
But he did it during the drive, too, right?
Yes.
And they had no timeouts at the end of the game. Then.
Almost lost it twice. You know, had Nelson Aguilar open on a deep one, had Nelson Aguilar open on a blitz on the series before that was just incomplete.
But this is something we go over every single day, Coach. I mean, especially on Fridays. Fridays is that day where we normally go and Hail Marys and things like that. It was just very disheartening to me. Let me just finish this. As a player, you work your butt off, and you put yourself in a position to have success and win the ball game, and then your coach makes a decision like that.
13 seconds left in the game, no timeouts. There's not time enough to run 2 plays. If you make the tackle inbounds, the game is going to be over. So you protect the sideline, you protect the end zone, you make them throw in the middle of the field, you rally in and make the tackle, and the game's over.
Can I just ask you one thing?
Yes, sir.
That's who Greg Williams is. Bring pressure. Dr. Heat. Bring the pressure. Bring the pressure. That's his calling card. Don't you always say be who you are in those biggest moments?
But you have to be who you are, but you have to be smart in those situations. It's situational football. And you mentioned it earlier. You said, Rodney, Coach Belichick would have never put you in a situation like that.
Yeah, and the situation just didn't call for it. The only way you lose the game there is on a big play. If you protect the sideline, protect the end zone, the game's over. That's what you have to do in that situation.
One last point. If doing the Notre Dame games with you, traveling with you, watching all the games every Sunday, you've said that about 30 times this year. Why have we gotten away from some of the basics in football that have for years held up, and now, whether it's analytics or something else, we're getting away from some of those just simple tenets of the game?
I really don't understand it. We lost a lot of games to the Patriots when I was coaching, and it was that way. You didn't beat yourself in the big moments. You made the smart plays. And that's the way I was brought up. And I'm not seeing that now. I'm seeing a lot of great X's and O's, but in those crucial moments, it's just smart play that comes in.
Coach, you took the words right out of my mouth. And I was thinking, nowadays with the NFL and the offenses, it's more about plays as opposed to situation. Coaches focus on plays, okay, X's and O's, how can I beat this DB, as opposed to the situation.
I bring Mike Florio in for one word here. Mike, I'm thinking of the Jets, and Jets fans were kind of rooting against their team because they really want to see them have the worst record, get the #1 pick, and draft Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. So in some ways, a crushing loss. Some Jets fans walked away smiling after that, which is kind of bizarre.
Well, but that's how it's become in the NFL. And even though the NFL would say no one tanks, and you could argue very persuasively that players never do, when the team isn't very good, decisions can easily be made that cause a team to lose. And I don't think the current regime, specifically the current coaching staff, is trying to lose, because they're not going to be there if they lose. This was Adam Gase's last chance to get a W, last best chance to get a W, to avoid going 0-16 and being exiled forever from the NFL, at least as a head coach. So I get it. I understand why Jets fans want Trevor Lawrence. They haven't had a true franchise quarterback since Joe Namath, assuming he'll come to the Jets and not try to make an Eli Manning or a John Elway power play, which I think more guys should do that. They have more leverage than they realize, but that's going to be the next step here. What's Trevor Lawrence going to do? Will he want to play for these Jets?
You know what's going to happen. They play at Seattle, at the Rams, Cleveland. They play New England Week 17. If the Patriots don't need that game, I could see somehow, some way, the Jets beating the Patriots.
Coach, what is the responsibility of Adam Gase in this entire situation? Now, would you have been on the earplug and listening to what your defense coordinator is calling?
I think yes, I would have, and I would have vetoed that. But even before that, you practice those situations. Yeah. Hey, on Saturday or Friday afternoon, we get in this situation, man. We used to practice it every other week. Hey, there's 10 seconds left, no timeouts. Here's our defense to keep people in bounds. Here's our defense against the Hail Mary play. You have to run those, and you have to be on it. And I would have been shocked. I think I would have called timeout if I heard that all-out blitz play call going.
It's crazy.
All right, so the Jets are not in the playoff picture, but the Raiders' situation changed significantly. Back to the big board and Steve.
Yeah, Mike, let's take a look at that. So the Raiders get that miracle win. In terms of the statistics here, it takes them from a 47% chance of making the playoffs only up 2 points to 49%. Basically, it just would have been a disaster if they hadn't pulled the game out. They'd be down at like a 10 or 15% chance now. So instead, they're still there in the thick of it at 49%. But if you're not impressed with how the Raiders look today, and if you're not impressed by how they've looked recently, then watch out, because next week, Raiders, Colts. In that game right now, the Colts in, the Raiders not in right now. If the Raiders are not able to defeat the Colts next week, all of the good they did in victory today, or a lot of that good in terms of their playoff chances, could be undone unless they can beat Indianapolis next week. So that's a critical game for both teams, particularly for the Raiders, just when you look at the statistical probabilities here. The other thing to keep an eye on here, one spot above Indianapolis and seemingly more safe in the playoffs is Miami, and yet you notice Miami's playoff chances are lower than Indianapolis's, just 51%. And in fact, they're not too far off Baltimore. Ninth place Baltimore's at 47%. That's what happens when you're Miami and you're playing Kansas City next week. You've got Buffalo at the end of the year. You've got some tough games coming up if you're Miami. And meanwhile, Baltimore, who you're not necessarily thinking of automatically in the playoff picture right now, has the easiest schedule in the league to close out the season. So there's an opportunity for Baltimore to get hot here and to move up while some of these other teams have some tough competition.
What about your Pats?
And look at the New England Patriots. I'm so glad you mentioned it. The Patriots now back to 500, a 21% chance of making the playoffs. They get the Rams on Thursday. If the Patriots can win that game, you're going to watch that number start to move up into the high 20s. If the Patriots can win another, well, we could play it out to 10-6, and then the Patriots are in.
So you know what that was? That was Kornacki playing to his base. All right, let's get to the speed round. Questions for Florio, Dungy, and Harrison. Do you believe in the Tua-led Miami Dolphins?
I do, because I think they play good defense, and I think Tua can make some of those off-schedule plays. I like where the Dolphins are.
When you say believe in them, are you talking make the playoffs?
Yeah, Steve's got them at 51% on the board. Can they go higher than that? You think they're going to make it?
Only thing that I'm concerned about is their lack of run game, Mike, with a young quarterback. I know they have a good defense and a coach that they play hard for. I would say yes, I believe him.
Mike?
Remember when he told me after his second start that it wasn't as hard as he thought it was going to be and he hadn't seen a lot of exotic looks? There's enough film out there now that down the stretch he's going to see some things that may confuse him. That would be my concern. I still believe because of the defense, but I'm concerned that they're going to catch up to Tua.
Mike, I'm going to come right back to you on the next one. Taysom Hill, is he showing that he's a legit starter in the NFL?
He believes he is, and I think Sean Payton believes he is. I mean, you have the passing game today that goes with 83 yards rushing, and he's putting in the time like a franchise quarterback, like a starting quarterback. He's dedicated to it around the clock. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this week. Drew Brees is eligible to come off of injured reserve on Friday. I don't think that's enough of a turnaround, even if he is good to go, to be ready to play on Sunday against the Eagles. I think the earliest we see Drew is against the Chiefs in Week 15, and Taysom gets at least one more game.
And, Mike, you talked to Taysom. I imagine Drew Brees has been a big help for him these last couple of weeks.
Drew Brees has been his biggest fan and his biggest supporter, and the conflict for Drew is he badly wants to come back and play at the same time. And Taysom knows his role. He knows that Drew's the guy, and it's his team. And whenever Drew is ready, Taysom's going to take a step back and say, go ahead, Drew, and finish the job. But I think Taysom recognizes whether it's next year in New Orleans or down the road somewhere else or wherever it may be, he believes he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And the question is, who's going to believe in him the way he believes in himself?
Tony?
I know Sean Payton believes in him. We were down there doing a game, and Sean said this guy can be Steve Young. I think the jury's still out, but I was impressed with the timing that he's had with Michael Thomas and some of those receivers throwing the ball.
Coach, this is probably one of the most difficult things that a player has to do, play 4 or 5 different positions and then come in and when your starting quarterback gets hurt and become the starting quarterback.
On the number 1 seed in the NFC, too.
It's absolutely amazing. Yes, he's a legitimate starter.
They've not dropped at all with him there. And Sean Payton 8-0 with the backups for Drew Brees over the last couple of years. Teddy Bridgewater 5 last year, 3 for Taysom this year. Last one. Should the Eagles go with Jalen Hurts? I'll go to Rodney because he brought this up first 3 weeks ago.
Absolutely. They should give him opportunity and not to be an option quarterback. Let him take all the reps or the majority of the reps during practice. Yes, give him a chance.
I think they're probably at that point where they need to do it to get a little spark. Carson Wentz today couldn't get anything generated, and they're falling out of the playoff race, so this might be the time.
Mike?
They're finally realizing that commitment to Carson Wentz is sunken costs, and the money's going to be paid no matter what, $25 million next year. But if he's not your best quarterback, you got to go with someone else if you want to win games.
Outstanding. Guys, did you like Kornacki? Should we have him back?
I did. I need to ask you one question, though, Steve. All those numbers, do they fact? If you have a good defense, do your numbers go up?
For you, yes.
That's awesome. Steve, great having you with us, man.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Rodney was saying, why is Kornacki here? But then he found he's a Patriots fan.
So he's good to go.
I'll text you.
I like it. No, I like it. Let's go.
Well, enjoy your week. We'll see you next week. Sunday Night Football next week. A good one. Steelers at the Bills. Football Night in America starts at 7 Eastern. Enjoy your week, everybody. Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.